Thanks everybody for coming, and I'm really happy to be here to talk about Kickstarter and figure out how you guys might be able to use it. And I'll stand not in front of my presentation. So how many people, I'm assuming that most of you are generally familiar with Kickstarter and kind of what crowdfunding is, but I mean, how many people have backed a campaign, actually supported a Kickstarter campaign? And has anybody run one before? All right, well, let's change that. So Kickstarter is based in Greenpoint. I actually walked over here from our office. We're about 90 people, and we've been operating this crowdfunding site for 5 years. And my name, as Yulman said, is Nick. I'm I'm the community manager for design and technology. And so that means I work with creators in those two categories on Kickstarter. So Kickstarter is, broadly speaking, a creative platform. So that serves art projects, music projects, dance, things that you would more typically think of artistic projects, but also we have a growing number of people using it to produce technology and design projects. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, kind of my work with those communities. And you can see these are some of the projects I've backed. A little bit of my background. So I'm an alum of NYU's ITP program, and I currently teach there, and I do a lot of design and development work on installations and commercial jobs myself. And before going to ITP, I was a manager of a recording archive department at the National Oral History Project StoryCorps. So I have a long-standing interest in sort of connecting people and communities with the use of technology. So as I said, Kickstarter's mission is to help bring creative projects to life. And that's everything from dance to food to apps to hardware. And over the 5 years we've been operating, 64,000 projects have been successfully funded with Kickstarter, about 6.4 million backers. And then of those 6.4 million backers, we've seen about 2 million, about a third of those are repeat backers. So what that means is it's people who have come to the platform probably to support one project, but have stuck around and have continued to be part of the Kickstarter community and discover new things. And that's really what we're most excited about, forming this community on Kickstarter who want to support just new ideas in general. So over those 5 years, over $1 billion have been funded to start these creative projects. Here's a little bit of a breakdown. You can see how it's distributed internationally. And then I pulled some numbers just for the design and technology categories. Overall, these categories represent about 20% of all projects on Kickstarter, and always growing. And then it's about 25% of the total money raised. So you can see to date there's been about 8,000 design projects launched on Kickstarter, about 5,000 technology projects. And I'm talking about these in general together, and my title is Design and Technology because it really is a fluid boundary. We see people launching hardware projects, connected devices in the design category, also in the technology category, which includes software and apps. We have a number of subcategories that represent a really diverse and broad range of creators. So for instance, in technology, we have a category for hardware, which has a lot of the kind of projects you've probably heard more about, like the Pebble, and Neil Young's Pono player, these big name projects that get a lot of press coverage. We also have, for instance, in that category, a space exploration subcategory. So a lot of people creating like tiny satellite projects to work on NASA challenges. We've got a flight category that has a lot of drone projects. So it really is quite diverse. And we have a software category for apps and websites and a lot of growth in that space. So how does Kickstarter work? So the basic mechanism for our site is you basically are presenting your idea to a group of people who want to support it. And you're kind of structuring it by saying, this is the amount of money I need to raise, so your funding goal. And you're saying, this is the period of time over which I'm going to raise it. So the average time people pick is 30 days. You can pick up to 60 days. But what our data shows is that going beyond that 30-day window is not really, there's not any advantage you gain. In some cases, actually sustaining interest and kind of just the resources it takes to run a campaign beyond those 30 days can actually make things more difficult for you. So you may have compelling reasons for making it longer, but in general, 30 days is what we recommend. And so Kickstarter is an all-or-nothing funding campaign. So that means that you reach your goal, then that funding goes through. Those people are charged. If you don't reach your goal, then no money changes hands. We don't take any kind of a fee. People who back the project are not charged. And so why do we think that this is the right solution? Why is this the right way to do it? I mean, the short answer is that if you need $5,000 to make your thing, and you only raise $3,000, that puts you in a bad position, and that puts the people who backed your project in a bad position. So it's really important to us that you're upfront about what your needs are for the project, and it's sort of a way for people to pipe up and say, like, yes, we think that this is worth supporting on that level. So in a way, it's less risk for everybody. It makes sure that you're sort of vetting your idea and that you're giving people a realistic sense of what it actually takes to do that. Beyond that, though, it really, it's a great motivating factor for people to get behind a project. So it encourages participation, and it really is compelling. So if you have this limited time period over which you are trying to fund your project, and you really need to hit that goal, it's a much more convincing appeal to go to your community and say, we really need your help at this point, rather than it being more sort of a tip jar model where you've put your idea out there, and if somebody happens to like it, they can kind of stop by and give you some money. It's a great way to really motivate people and get your community to form around you. So in terms of funding success, and I'm sorry about the contrast of these slides here, so 44% of projects across the site are successful. And just to clarify, we're defining success in this case as reach their funding goal. I mean, it's really not as binary as that. We have plenty of examples of people who didn't reach their funding goal, but were still able to regroup later, come back to a phenomenally successful Kickstarter, or even just use those backers who did pledge as sort of their mailing list for the next stage of the project. And when they were able to regroup and kind of think through it a little bit more, we're still able to successfully bring something to market, even if it didn't happen through Kickstarter. So success in this case is we're talking about the funding goal, but there's many success stories that go beyond just that statistic. And beyond that, we find that a quarter of projects that don't meet their goal don't even get a single pledge. So what that means is that's people who are not even telling anybody about the fact that they've put this on Kickstarter. So that's obviously an important lesson. You're bringing people to the platform. You need to tell people about it. So thinking about those, it really is, as far as campaigns that have actually actively engaged and actively tried to bring people to the project, the success rate is much higher. And then, when you're successful, when you successfully reach that goal, our fee is 5%. And that's how we sustain the site, and that's that's how you're contributing to our growth. And so setting a funding goal is obviously an important thing to figure out when you're thinking about how you're going to approach this project. And so there's a lot of different ways to think about it. I mean, on the base level, as I mentioned, you should make sure that it is enough to make sure that you can successfully carry out the project. And this can be in conjunction with other funding you have. It's not necessarily that you have to have every piece of your budget covered with your Kickstarter campaign, but make sure you know what your path to success is if you reach your funding goal. But beyond that, people have different ways of defining what success means for them. So maybe breaking even and being able to just cover your costs to do initial tooling and get your product out there is success. Maybe you feel like you actually need to turn a profit. And then how does this funding goal fit into your future plans for your company? Many people launch a new business on Kickstarter. Many people are taking an existing business and just trying to get their next product out the door. So these are all important things for you to think about, and all things that impact that amount of money you need to get. Sometimes people feel like, oh, I need to pick $1 million funding goal because it'll broadcast to the world that I'm a big deal and that a lot of people should pay attention to this project. And it obviously doesn't work that way. You should be as transparent about why you're raising this money and kind of be as honest with yourself about what you actually need when you're doing that. And so what we've discovered kind of through our data is that the tipping point for successful funding in a project is about 30%. So 90% of projects that raise 30% of their goal will go on to succeed. So if your goal is $1,000 and you raise 300 of that, you have a 90% shot at actually completing that goal. And then drilling down even a little further, projects that raise even just 10% of their goal, 75% of those succeed. So what this means is that if you've got a core idea that you can get at least a base audience excited about, you've got a really good shot at actually reaching that goal. It's getting that initial community together and kind of getting them to continue to spread the word and kind of bring you to that finish line. And so how does Kickstarter work? I mean, for us, fundamentally, it's about storytelling. It's about you presenting your idea in a compelling way that invites people to become part of that story. So it's not just about a commercial pitch. It's not just saying, this is a product that's going to make your life better, thank you very much. It's saying, this is the team of people who are creating this project. This is the journey that we've been on. We're showing you examples of our development process, and we're talking about why we really want you to be part of this process. And it's really inviting people to, even with a $1 pledge, kind of subscribe to that story and kind of hear updates and be part of what your project is. So the mechanisms through which you do that, so one very important one is the project video. So Kickstarter is a very video-driven site. It's really the way that most people kind of communicate their ideas and the way that most backers will first hear about an idea and kind of be compelled to take part. And And this is, as I was saying, this is not a commercial pitch necessarily. It's not just a kind of a glib assessment of why this project is important. It's inviting people to meet you, to understand why you care about this project and kind of the work you've done up to this point. And so showing behind the scenes footage of your prototyping process, or showing things that inspire you and have brought you along this process are just as important in this project video as a clear and concise demonstration of the product itself. Another obviously important component is the rewards that you're offering. So Kickstarter is not a donation platform. It's not just you standing up there and saying, please give us money, it'll help us do this thing, thanks. It's an exchange. So if I'm giving $10 to a project, I should get $10 roughly of something in exchange. And so in some cases that actually means that I'm getting a product. So for many physical products and hardware, that's a lot of the reasons why people are backing the project, because they actually want the thing. But that's not necessarily always the case. A lot of very successful rewards are less tangible and are more experiential. So if I'm creating an app, maybe it's really compelling for people to get beta access to that if it's something they really care about and really want to be part of that process. Or maybe it's really important for somebody to be able to meet the creators. They really love what you're doing and they're willing to kind of give a little bit more for that experiential reward of getting to see where you've done all of your R&D. So get creative with the rewards and don't always just think of it as a straight, you're not just necessarily selling a product. But make sure you are providing value to somebody that's compelling and it's not just asking for money. I mean, there's great examples in a lot of the creative categories. So things like some people who are making films will even like get character, you can back to have a character named after you or have some kind of input in the creative process. And there's all kinds of ways to incorporate that into products and software as well. So some key levels for rewards that we've seen across the site from our data is $25 is the most common pledge. So that's where most people are deciding to step up and support a campaign. And then a $100 pledge is the one that generates the most funding. So most campaigns getting the majority of their funding through that level. So another really important component of the campaign and part of the process are project updates. So it's something that people are often less familiar with than the rewards and the kind of project landing page, but this is really the way that you continue to kind of keep your backers engaged and continue to tell the story both during the campaign and then after the campaign is wrapped up. So it's your stream of information. It goes right into the inboxes of your backers, and it's your choice. You can make it either private for just backers or it can be public so it's something that everybody can see. But again, it's the way that you kind of answer questions people have. So often it's an opportunity to say there's a demonstration that's more detailed or more specific than you wanted to get into with your main project video, but it's a question that's coming up a lot from backers. It's a great way to drill into more detail and say, like, I wanted to show you this feature of the product that a lot of you asked about, and then send that out in the campaign. And getting those updates in your inbox it's important to remember that your backers are not, they're still a very valuable resource. They're not people who you have in your pocket already. They are your opportunity to keep spreading the word about the project. So updates are a great way to keep them energized and keep giving them kind of new pitches, new information about your project that makes them want to share it further. So here's just a couple of examples of project updates. And I'm gonna dig into kind of a case study of a successful app project in a sec, and we'll talk about some of the ways they use updates. And so who are the backers? So the backers are essentially your kind of most engaged community. They're your early adopters, the people who are willing to raise their hand even at this beginning stage and say, I really care about what you're doing and I'm going to support it financially, but also I'm going to spread the word. So whether they're giving $1 or they're giving $5,000, again, they're an asset to you as far as spreading information and excitement about the campaign. And they're also the ones who are kind of keeping you positive while you're doing this. It's great to have this affirmation of people who are writing and saying, I love what you're doing, because it's very hard running a Kickstarter campaign. So it's important to figure out who these people are, how they're finding out about your project, and then that way you can have a better sense of where you need to kind of focus your other communications and marketing efforts. So what communities really are responding to this, so you can dig deeper into those. I mean, it's not surprising probably that the majority of people who are the initial backers are going to be from your own community, your own network of people. So it's going to be your friends, your colleagues, people who, through whatever other kind of showcases or events you've been able to talk about the product and who have sort of already given you their mailing address. So, but it is very important that you are spending time building that network. It's obviously not a news story anymore for somebody to be launching a Kickstarter campaign, so it's very important that the day you do launch, you're sending that out to what you consider to be your kind of strongest group of supporters so that they'll jump in right away and kind of give you a strong base to start from. I mean, it's also a great way to get feedback initially about your campaign. So as anybody knows who's been involved in a lengthy creative process, it's very easy to have tunnel vision, for you to be focusing on one aspect of the process that you think is most important. But it's often the case that there's completely obvious questions or completely obvious sort of things about the project or about the product that you're creating that you wouldn't think about. So it's important to be sharing your campaign, sharing the way that you're presenting it to people who you trust and who you think represent the kind of core audiences you want to reach and get great feedback. And then among that community of people who you're reaching out to, also think about press, people who have expressed interest in your product or what you're creating, people who have given you nice kind of write-ups on blogs and features. Great opportunity to, even before you launch your campaign, reach out to them and let you know what you're planning to do so that you can kind of line up some of that press in advance. I mean, so on the whole, this whole conglomeration of people, of the backers you already have who are going to be supporting you and who you'll be attracting through the campaign and the press that you're reaching out to, that's your community. That's the kind of, for us, even more important than funding on Kickstarter, is that you're building a community of people who care about what you're doing. They're your first group of users, the people who are going to be most vocal, most enthusiastic about what you're doing. And just kind of as a side note too, have many stories about people who have actually made hires out of their backers, out of the community of backers. So you may notice that while you're running your campaign and you're completely overwhelmed with questions coming in the comments section, and you notice that there are one or two backers who are always stepping up and sort of answering those questions on your behalf, or always sort of your advocate. Those are great people to kind of tap on the shoulder when the time comes to say, are you interested in having a kind of communications role in this? You clearly seem to love this product and be good at expressing your interest in it. So plenty of examples of that, of people finding people to join the company just through the community of backers. So I'm going to jump in now to a project case study. And for this group, I'm going to be looking at this really interesting weather app. So a data-driven, information-driven app that funded at the end of 2011 on Kickstarter. So Dark Sky, does anybody use Dark Sky? Does anybody know about it? It's one of the most beautiful weather prediction apps out there. And they had a really novel take on what weather prediction even meant. So instead of it being something that was based on a week-long, 2-week-long projection, they started asking the question, would it be possible to create an algorithm that synthesizes information and makes a prediction for a specific location over the next couple of hours? So I can actually know, if I'm going to this park, is it going to rain? And so they spent a lot of time developing this technology and then brought it to Kickstarter. And so this is their just kind of project landing page. And you can see that over the course of the project, they raised about $40,000 from about 1,200 backers. These are a couple of example images from their project page. So you can see that before even coming to Kickstarter, before even launching this, they had a fairly well-developed idea of what their user interface looked like. And they were able to communicate sort of the story of what their app is to potential users. So this is really important. Particularly with apps, people often think that they can kind of come to Kickstarter and say, this is my big idea. It's like Uber for helicopters. I'm sure that already exists. But just kind of that one sentence elevator pitch, and then everybody's going to come to you because that idea is so compelling. And that's just not the case. It really is important that you're communicating that idea, that kind of elevator pitch, that killer reason why somebody should be interested in this, but also that you're demonstrating the work you've already done on it and giving people the confidence that not only do you have a great idea, but you have a great execution for that idea. You have the talent and kind of the knowledge to actually bring that to life in a compelling way. Here are a couple of examples of, this is from their rewards. So you can see their $15 reward is the most basic thing, as you'd imagine. You're just getting a copy of the app. And so that's going to be a bit more than it sells for in the App Store, but still, if you really care about this and you're really excited about it, that's a very reasonable level on which to back and kind of to show your support. Going up from there, you can get the app and a t-shirt, obviously a very popular way of approaching things. Be really creative with the swag you're offering. A lot of people have t-shirts already, so if there's something that's more specific that ties into the community you're trying to reach or the idea you're trying to create, that's a great idea. So the Dark Sky folks also offered this really beautiful umbrella. So obviously people who are backing this app care a lot about weather, and it's a nice sort of tie-in. But then taking a look at their kind of higher level rewards, so for $500, you can get access to the beta, and you can be part of the sort of testing group and help them kind of refine the features. And so this is really exciting for somebody who may be a developer themselves, or maybe is interested in seeing kind of the back-end story of how this app is coming to life, and really understanding how these guys as developers are structuring their process, and then also, of course, just contributing to what you hope will be a great product. And then the $1,500 level, which they actually have 7 backers for, so it's a pretty sizable chunk of their rewards there. is getting that beta access, but then also it's sort of forming a business connection. So getting acknowledgement on the site and a link to a business website. So this is, again, another opportunity to, you're launching this product and you want to identify potential collaborators down the line. So more than likely the people who are backing this level also have an interest in doing something around weather or data or information in kind of the tech space, and see this as a cool opportunity to sort of partner with Dark Sky right from the get-go. So that's a really interesting thing to be able to offer, to already kind of put it out there that you're open to collaboration and kind of business partnerships as well. Another important thing, obviously, is talking about who you are. So this is, they chose a very sort of casual, minimal approach, which is fine. They're just saying we're mild-mannered web developers. But they do link to their portfolio of other projects. So you may be a team of 2 people, and just pointing people to your work is the most compelling way to show it. Or maybe you're a team of 15 people, and you all have very specialized roles and years of experience in other high-profile projects. However you present it is up to you. Make sure it matches the tone of what you're trying to communicate, but make sure that you're giving people the confidence that you're the right team of people to pull this off. Just having a great idea is obviously not enough. You have to be the right person to realize that idea. So this is an example of one of their updates. So this is the 5th update they posted, and this is actually the first update after the campaign wrapped up. So they had already posted 4 updates while the campaign was live, just to kind of keep people in the loop about what was happening with the campaign and to kind of keep people excited. But this is the first sort of in-process update. And so as I was saying, updates are a really important way to kind of keep people involved in your process and let them know. So they've all backed for this thing at this point, and they're excited to get it, and they want to know how the process is coming along and make sure that it's not just this kind of wall of, I don't know what's happening in there. I really hope that they meet their targets. So with this update, they're sharing kind of the work they've done on one of the user interfaces. So they're posting a video to Vimeo that shows the features that they've developed already. And then they're also announcing this really exciting thing that they've decided to launch an API for the underlying technology, this kind of weather prediction engine that they've created. So again, it's a great way to pull people in who are developers themselves and who have expressed interest in that. And then the comment section is not only for the project itself, but each update has its own comment section as well. So in this case, so they posted that video demoing some features, and they're getting feedback on very, very specific features. So in this case, they're talking about whether a certain element wobbling to indicate uncertainty is effective. So they're getting feedback from people who are looking at that and in mid-process, like finding out whether that's an effective way to actually communicate that information. So obviously it's up to you. You can take it or leave it, whether this is actually the user testing community that's of value to you. But it's worth considering, because these are the people who are theoretically care most about what you're doing. And then this is the update that every Kickstarter creator loves to post, saying basically we have finished it and we're about to ship. So in this project's case, it means posting a link to iTunes where you can go and download the app. And it's just talking about how happy they are to have had the support. But this is not where this has ended for them. So a full 2 years plus later, they're still posting updates to their campaign. So when the next version of Dark Sky came out, it was still this community that they formed on Kickstarter that was important enough to continue kind of making that announcement to. So think about the Kickstarter campaign as what's happening over those 30 days, but it's also a channel for communicating with your most devoted followers, your core community throughout the life of the project, even after you've sent out and shipped the project itself. It's still a really great channel for keeping people involved with what you're doing. And then these are just some screenshots from the current build of Dark Sky. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools you have as a creator. So this is, as we looked at before, this is the front page for the project. This is what kind of the public view is, but there's a whole set of data tools as well that we give creators so that they can kind of understand what's happening and how they're actually getting their funding. So this is a funding progress chart from the dashboard. In this case, you can see, this is really interesting, this spike here on November 9th for Dark Sky came after they posted an update that basically gave a very detailed technical explanation of how their algorithm worked, how they were doing this. So that was sort of, in a way, kind of an alternate launch date for them, because that drove a lot of press coverage of the project, and a lot of people had a different level of interest because they were being able to get into a level of technical detail that they hadn't previously. So things like that, updates really can kind of spark new interest and bring new creators to the project, or new backers to the project. And that's really the challenge. So as you imagine, the trajectory for most Kickstarter projects is a big spike at the beginning when you first announce it, and then you'll see a spike at the end where people who have been watching the project kind of jump on and say, all right, I want to back this. I've been watching this whole month. But to the extent that you can kind of control continued interest and kind of get through that plateau period that often happens in the middle through posting updates, through making new announcements about the project, that's a great way to sustain interest. You can see the breakdown of referrers. In this case, so the green is from internal to Kickstarter, so whether it's on the home page or through other projects or project updates, versus external. So it's 55, 45. It's usually skews a little bit farther in the other direction for people, so more external than through Kickstarter. And then you can get a breakdown of what those sources are. So you can see what press coverage actually yielded pledges, what features through the Kickstarter website, whether it's getting a staff pick or being included in a newsletter or something like that, brought the most backers to it. And you can kind of retarget your marketing based on that. And then you get information about where people are watching your video. So whether it's through the actual project page or through embeds offsite. So you can embed the video, and often blogs or people covering the project will embed the video as well. And then you get a breakdown of your reward popularity. So obviously that $15 reward has the most number of backers. But actually the level of funding between that reward with 800 backers and that higher level $1,500 reward that had 7 backers, so they have way more reach as far as the number of people, but the levels of funding are much closer than they would appear based on this too.
Are these metrics available throughout the life cycle of the Kickstarter campaign, or only?
Oh, throughout, yeah. So this is live data you're getting about your project, so that, yeah, the entire purpose of it is definitely to give you as clear a view as possible of how people are finding your project and what's really motivating people to pledge. And we're hoping to develop more and more tools along those lines to help creators do that. So just next steps, if you guys are considering, if you have a project that you think would be right for Kickstarter, these are the things that we would recommend. First of all, spend a lot of time on the site. Look around and find projects that are in the same category as what you're doing. So if you're doing an app, definitely check out a lot of successful app projects, or just things that you feel like would reach the same community that you're interested in reaching. So even if it is a different kind of product, are you essentially trying to reach this same group of users? And see what they're doing as far as how are they presenting their video. Did they shoot their video on an iPhone, or did they have a large production budget to do it? And we see things, the full range can be effective. So, but just figure out for the kind of thing you're trying to do, what seems to be effective in reaching that community on Kickstarter. Definitely back projects. There's nothing like having the experience of being a backer and sort of seeing firsthand what feels genuine to you, what feels like it's motivating you to spread the word about the project. And also it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to kind of follow the trajectory of somebody starting off and really continuing to develop their idea, even beyond when the campaign has launched. It's great if you're a developer or you're developing a product. It's a great way to educate yourself and see from an inside perspective, how do you go from getting funding to manufacturing to actually bringing a product to market. And that's obviously one of the really unique things about Kickstarter, and what makes it so different from offering just a product on a store shelf is you're offering really the experience of seeing something come to life as much as anything else. And then, like I said, get feedback from people who you consider to be kind of the core audience you're trying to reach. Talk to people, show them your project build, what you're considering presenting. It seems like a really dumb advice, but you'd be surprised how many times people don't think about their product from the perspective of somebody who would want to back it. And you can just say, well, if you were going to back this product, what would be the 5 things that you wanted to have answered? Or if I was watching this video and I didn't already have years of experience with what this is, would it actually clearly communicate to me what this thing does and why it might be interesting? And then, obviously tell people. Like I said, a big thing, a big important aspect of getting a strong start with your campaign is building that network of people who are going to immediately get that notification that you're live and want to come back. So the more you can go to events like this, the more you can kind of showcase your project and get people who you think are your core audience excited about it and kind of gather their contact info, the better positioned you are to have that strong start that everybody wants. And then, by all means, talk to us. So I'm, as I said, community manager for design and technology. It means I work directly with creators who are at every stage of the process, from just, I have this idea, I'm not sure if I'm ready for Kickstarter, I need help developing it, figuring out who else to reach out to I'm ready to launch, I have this thing ready to go, can you give me some last-minute tips? And to supporting people throughout the campaign and helping them figure out how to really make it most effective. So for any top-level category at Kickstarter, you can email, so in this case, design ad or technology ad, but it also applies to music ad or food ad. You can send an email to that, and it'll go to somebody who has a specialization within that area who can kind of help you figure out how best to use Kickstarter. So I hope this has been somewhat helpful, and I'm happy to take any questions you guys have. Yeah.
Physical part, an app with them. And, there's like the patent process, and there's the, prototype phase. Basically, can I set up my Kickstarter Kickstarter project so that I have different segments and say, hey, we're trying to get this patent together, do you want to help with that, or does it need to be like the entire thing?
Do you mean in terms of within a single campaign asking for support, or do you mean running multiple campaigns to do different stages?
Multiple campaigns to different stages.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something we've definitely seen. So there are some Kickstarter campaigns that are based solely around prototyping a product. Say, I have this idea, I have some sketches, but I need to develop my initial prototype. Now, one thing that's important to note with this is that we do have some guidelines around what you're allowed to actually offer, depending on what stage you're at. So if you're actually offering the product, if you're actually essentially saying, if you back at this level, we'll be shipping you this product, you need to be able to demonstrate a working prototype. You can't, if you're only at the stage of getting that first prototype together, it's not appropriate in our view to promise somebody kind of a fully finished packaged product. But that's not to say that you can't prototype for you can't run a campaign for that prototype. And then often what people will do is, sometimes taking on like a large-scale manufacturing process right away isn't what makes sense for people. So maybe you're at the stage where you have a working prototype, and you know that I can crank out 100 of these basically by making my own circuit boards and kind of essentially hand assembling prototypes. And it's really worth it for me to get those 100 prototypes into the hands of essentially user testers. So that's definitely an approach that some people take. So doing a smaller run, and you can limit the number of rewards you offer. So if you don't want to be surprised by thousands of people backing, you can say, I'm just running this campaign to offer 100 of these. And then take that campaign and sort of come back later when you're ready to do a larger scale effort as well. So absolutely different stages of the process. Just be clear about what stage of the process you're in and what your long-term plan is for the project. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you still restricted to just Amazon for payment, or are there other options?
So right now our payment system for US campaigns is through Amazon. Through international, if you're launching in other countries, it goes through other payment systems. That may be something that evolves, but for right now it's Amazon. Go ahead.
If you're trying to get funding from somewhere else, let's say like a grant or maybe an investor, is it kind of against your policy to get funding from that other place plus you, or trying to do it at the same time?
Not at all, no. I mean, a lot of the most compelling campaigns are able to talk about how they've already had this support in this area, but they need Kickstarter to step up and provide support for this area, or to kind of push them over the finish line. It's actually very effective if you can point to other people who have basically said, this is a great idea, I want to support it, and it gives people confidence that there's some other vetting out there. So that's great.
I'm not a journalist, I work for a law firm.
Okay.
Just to put a preface with that. Where equity crowdfunding is on the horizon, and Kickstarter has said publicly that they're not going to engage in equity crowdfunding. Whereas Indiegogo, you guys have a stellar reputation. Kickstarter has the best reputation of any crowdfunding companies. How do you see in the future equity crowdfunding affecting the space, and why has Kickstarter opted not to engage in it?
Right, yeah, so this is a question we get a lot. And to us, equity crowdfunding versus the model that we work with are two different things. And to us, combining them doesn't really make a lot of sense. You're going to be, if you are essentially going out there and trying to raise equity for your company, the appeal you make, the way you present your project, is going to be very different from when you're actually trying to connect with end users. And they should be different. They're two different audiences. And we are most interested in, so our basic principle is that people on Kickstarter should be creating something to share with other people. That's sort of our mission. And to that end, we are much more focused on creators building a community of users around their product. And so for us right now, that equity crowdfunding doesn't fit into that picture.
So are you going to watch, I'm sure you'll be paying close attention when the regulations, I guess, are firmed up. Is that potentially going to change in the future?
It's not in our plans. And yeah, like I said, to us, it's two totally different things, and there's probably a space for that. But I mean, honestly, if I were starting a company, I don't know if equity crowdfunding would sound like a good idea to me. I mean, I think when you're offering equity in your company to somebody, hopefully it's because you've built a long-term relationship with them and you understand who they are and what they can bring to your success. And just opening it up to the public at large, I mean, maybe it's necessary for some people, and maybe it'll be a great way to gain that funding. But I think getting investment capital in that way is a very different process than what we're offering as far as offering the experience of the actual product you're creating. Go ahead.
Will there be any flexible funding options soon? If you don't meet your goal, you can still raise the money?
Well, as I said, we really believe that the all or nothing model is what's most effective for both backers and creators. And I know that there are cases to be made for flexible funding, but we feel strongly right now that this is what allows more projects to succeed. And as I said, it doesn't rule out sort of the model of people continuing to gain from those backers that stepped up and said, I want to pledge to this. So even if you don't successfully collect money through Kickstarter, there's nothing stopping you from continuing to contact those people on your mailing list, or to even run another Kickstarter campaign and essentially have it from day one seeded with all those people. So we don't see it as all or nothing in the sense that like you are completely shut out from the system if you don't succeed your first time. But as I said before, if you don't raise what you say you need for your goal, it actually puts you in a bad position, or it communicates to backers that you may not actually be able to pull off what you're trying to do. And so for us, it's not the best situation for either side.
And just to follow up on that, so if you run a Kickstarter campaign, you don't meet your goal,
right?
You can, in the period, the time period expires, you can re-up it and fine-tune it.
Absolutely, we see it all the time, and we don't recommend that you immediately just launch right away and say, oh, I'm just trying this again, essentially extending the campaign. Hopefully what you're doing is you're sending updates to backers, thanking them, and asking them for feedback, or engaging this community you've already built, and then kind of regrouping a little bit yourself and figuring out which parts of my campaign were not doing everything I needed to do. And sometimes it's a matter of just, once you've been out there and hopefully gotten some press coverage, kind of continue to work those contacts, raising the awareness of what you're doing. Many examples of people who came back a year later and then blew through their funding goal after trying a second time.
I see that there are a lot of things for example, films and whatever, where you can get a t-shirt or something on, things like that. How does the fulfillment of those items happen? Is that something you get involved in? Is that to the company? Is there a third party? How does that whole system work?
Right, so we're not involved with fulfillment in any official way. There is something developing around digital fulfillment. So we have recently, so iTunes now has a Watch Now page where you can actually go and watch films funded specifically through Kickstarter. So in that area, there's possibilities, but we're not involved with physical fulfillment. There are a lot of services that have sprung up around that sort of thing that you're welcome to explore and use. And this is something too where talking to other creators is really helpful. And this is another great thing to do if you're considering launching a campaign. Reach out to somebody who's done a campaign that's somewhat similar to what you think, and find out, did they use a fulfillment service for that, or did they just do it themselves? Find out which of those fulfillment services actually were effective or were easy to work with. And this is another priority for us in general, is building more tools for the community of creators to communicate with each other. So that's something to look out for in the near future.
Now, would you provide, let's say, your seal of endorsement for various ones, or let's say there's some?
We don't do that currently, just because we kind of don't want to put our thumb on the scale as far as that goes, and we want to make sure that there's a whole ecosystem of products and services that have sprung up around Kickstarter, and right now we're agnostic about it. We can see reasons why people would want to use them, but we also, it's like anything else, make sure you know what they're offering and what they're charging, and that it's actually worth their while. I mean, sometimes just thinking about what your actual staffing needs for the product is another way to solve that. So if bringing somebody on who has experience producing that kind of thing to your team and can kind of essentially play the role in a more internal way that these services would be providing, maybe that's to your best interest as well. So.
Do you have competitors, and if so, why should we do Kickstarter instead of other ones?
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to find plenty of other crowdfunding campaigns platforms out there. More people succeed on Kickstarter than any other one of those as far as percentages, and more people raise more money on Kickstarter than all the other campaign websites combined. And really, to us, the reason for that is because we have a focus on community, and we see more of those repeat backers coming through Kickstarter. And there is a community of creators who really love this platform and love sharing advice, tips, and even saying, this other person is doing this great project, and sending a message out to their backers saying, think about this if this is what you're excited about. So for us, it boils down to just kind of the number of people involved with our site and the kind of our focus on community, and that brings more people to your campaign.
And are there ever instances where somebody's wanted a refund, and what happens in that scenario?
Meaning, like somebody...
And they decided they no longer wanted to support it.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, and it's up to you as the creator to decide how you deal with that. it's like running any other business. You know, if you're selling a product, you should know where you stand as far as if somebody isn't satisfied with it, what level of offering a refund or doing customer support you're comfortable with.
So what's next for Kickstarter? You have a successful platform. Where now?
Right. I mean, we're growing day by day. We actually, right now, there's more than 5,000 projects live on Kickstarter, which represents more than there ever have been. And our growth is not only in terms of numbers, but we're continuing to expand internationally. So right now, we're open for US creators, Canadian, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and we just recently launched in the Netherlands, which was our first foray into a non-English speaking country. And so expect more expansion in other countries. As far as creators, and we get backers from all over the world, but right now you have to be based in one of those countries to actually launch a campaign. And then also, as I said, there's a big focus right now on developing tools and resources to let the community come together more and have conversations outside of the comments section of a specific campaign. So if you're a creator doing a hardware project and you want to talk to other successful creators, we want tools that are available for you to connect with those people and really kind of get that support, not just from us, but from people who actually have launched projects and have that success.
So this is your first foray into a non-English speaking country. When let's say I go into a campaign in the US and an international campaign, if it's a non-speaking country, do you kind of do like translations and cards, or do you have any blueprint in terms of how you guys are handling translation, or will it just be if you speak the language good, if not?
So right now, even for Dutch projects, there is a requirement that the campaign be presented in English, at least in part. So that is still the kind of lingua franca of Kickstarter. But plenty of campaigns present in multiple languages. So we have a lot of, and one thing I'll clarify as well about international creators. It's fine if you are, for instance, a Japanese company and you have a partnership with somebody in the US who's doing distribution, or you're working with a designer who's based in the US. It just has to be that there's somebody involved with the project who has an address in one of those countries and can kind of set up the Amazon account. So it's not that we are not seeing, we see projects from all over the world. We see plenty of Japanese projects throughout Europe, Israel. So people have figured it out in different ways. So often if you know there is another target market that is likely to support it, people will present the campaign in both English and whatever that other language is. Certainly as we expand internationally, we'll be trying to figure out site features and kind of UI elements that probably make that more streamlined. But for right now, it's really up to you kind of how you decide to cater to those other languages.
And just to follow up to another question, if you don't make your goal, and let's say you want to repackage, find out what's going on, relaunch 6 months from now, if during that time, do you just hold on to the money, or if you don't relaunch, should you give it back, or?
Just to be clear, if you don't make your goal, no money changes hands. So it's, the backers are not charged, you're not charged any kind of a fee. I mean, there still is that record of the campaign, so you still have all that data, and you still have, probably most importantly, the ability to send updates to all the people who already supported your campaign. But yeah, you don't need to deal with any kind of refunding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You might have covered this already, but what's the biggest campaign from a dollar perspective? What's the average?
Right, so the Pebble watch is the biggest. It's around $10 million, and that's that's both it's a great thing for Kickstarter, but it's also, we don't want that to be the only perspective people have if they're doing a hardware project. We see in that category, just even within technology, we see everything from people who are raising $500 to make a really quirky Arduino shield that 100 other people will be backing for, to people who are launching big projects like Pebble, where Neil Young's Pono player was another kind of blockbuster this past year. I think he raised $6 million. But there's everything in between as well. There are people who are really launching their business, and as I said, for whom launching a Kickstarter is about getting that capital, but it is also about getting that initial user base of 2,000 people who are your most enthusiastic users, your early adopters, and who want to get the first version of that product and be part of that community right away. And all those stats are on our website. So you can see the breakdown of different categories and kind of average pledges. You can sort by most funded, most popular, lots of different ways. So I'd encourage you, if you have questions about that, or you want to find what is the campaign that feels like the closest equivalent to what I want to do, there's a lot of different tools for doing that. And that's what's most important. I mean, these kind of global statistics are obviously helpful to some extent, but finding whatever your closest analog is probably going to give you a better sense of kind of how your campaign's going to go.
I've noticed that there's a pretty much bulk of people that are using Kickstarter now, from producers,
yeah.
As you said, most of our funding is going to come from friends and family, plus kind of the marketing we have to do. Is it better to be a little well known before you actually do this Kickstarter, because they're able to reach a wider audience that the average Joe would probably not be able to reach?
I mean, sure. If you can get a mailing list like LeVar Burton's, by all means, that would definitely help. But I mean, it's certainly not a requirement that you kind of start off from that point of view. And and this is a question like a lot of people ask, kind of how have these kind of celebrity creators affected the ecosystem, and whether it's discouraging people who just have a small project. And by no means, what we see is that people who come and back a Spike Lee project, who come and back Zach Braff's movie or Veronica Mars, they're often first-time Kickstarter users. Those people are bringing people to the website who probably haven't used Kickstarter before, but what we're seeing is that a lot of them do stick around and support other campaigns. And having these high-profile examples actually just makes the whole ecosystem healthier. Sort of a rising tide lifts all boats, is our perspective on it. I mean, that said, so obviously becoming a celebrity is a great approach, but it's important to gain as much support as possible. So to get as well known within your specific community, or get as many people's eyes on your project and get as many people excited about what you're doing before you launch, certainly. You don't want it to be this incredible surprise that you've launched this Kickstarter. That's very, very often not going to be very effective. Any other questions? Great. Well, if anybody has more specific things or want to just talk about a project you're working on, I'm happy to stick around. Thanks so much.